any other ideas for establishing some of your initial routines?
A lot of the first 6 weeks, especially with K through 2, is just modeling and demonstrating the behavior that you want them to get accustomed to. So
I tried something last year going back to like squad lines. It's called Whistle 1 2 3.
Whatever you would normally do, I think at the very beginning, as long as the kids are not on top of each other, I still think it's still a worthwhile way to incorporate.
Genius. I'll say.
What's your top concerns going into the school year?
I had 2 separate kids lose teeth last year from scooters.
Is that right?
I'm not quite sure how cooperative activities are going to look, and I consider that to be a huge part of my curriculum.
Sounds like you're upset about a personal elementary experience of playing soccer.
Yeah.
You didn't get the ball very much, did you?
I guess that's kind of what my gut is getting games like that, even if we have to interrupt the game.
But they enjoyed it. They loved that game. They were like, we got to do this again. And
that you can do with partners, kind of, mirroring each other or rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah. Is that based on your birth date or maturity?
You're trying to slide in there, aren't you, Jamie?
Yeah. They're shutting all the water fountains off in our school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
sure
actually, glad you mentioned that, Audrey. Same thing at my school. If you're in New York, like Don, the farther you are from your partner, it actually creates more of a challenge.
With our younger kids, I have these. I make up from Toy Story. I have these.
The funny side of me is I just actually can't wait to watch kindergartners for the first time.
Tough to
I've got my Green Bay Packer mask ready.
You're which one?
Yeah.
My Green Bay Packer mask.
Oh my word! Welcome, physical educators. This is Thinking PE.
Because Phi Ed is more than just fun and games.
I'm Stacy Nelson.
And I'm Jamie Seneca.
And it's our goal to dig deeper beyond the activities that make your class awesome.
So buckle up and join us on this journey. Welcome to another edition of Thinking PE. Stacy, you know what I've been thinking?
I have no idea what you've been thinking, Jamie.
I have been thinking, where are we going to start for this school year?
That is a big, big question. You know what would be a great idea? Is if somebody would get together like a bunch of PE teachers and put a Zoom meeting together and ask them questions like that, like, how are we going to start this thing?
Oh, that's a genius idea.
Turns out, I think 2 people did that. I don't think I'd throw the genius thing around too far, but
Yeah.
relating to these guys. But yeah, that was a good session we had. We had some PE teachers that volunteered their time to sit and talk about this. And I think we got a great session here that's going to make a fabulous podcast today.
And that was one of Tom Roberts' comments when we interviewed him back on a previous podcast, was you get 15 Phi Ed teachers together in a room and they'll figure it out. And that's how this happens, is you take all these concepts and ideas and anxieties and stresses, and pretty soon the ideas start to come out. And it's a pretty cool process.
Yeah. And we didn't quite get to 15 this time. Hopefully more people will show up next time, but we had 4 or 5 people that provided most of the content, and we had a few other people bop in and out and listen and that type of thing. And I'm hoping people feel welcome to do that. We're going to do it Wednesday nights here for sure through the rest of the month, and maybe into September as well. So I'm hoping everybody feels welcome, that if you're listening to the podcast, I hope you feel welcome to join us. It's Central Time, 8 p.m. on Wednesday nights. And look through it on Facebook. You can find the links to join us, but we hope you do.
Yeah, and that's this Wednesday, the 19th, and the following Wednesday, the 26th.
Yeah, and
of August.
If it goes well, we'll just keep going right into September. So, but this particular section that we're going to talk about now, or we're gonna have us listen to, is interesting discussion started forming around masks. So I'm hoping you'll get as much out of it as we did. Take a listen.
What are your rules about masks?
We haven't been given any of that detail yet down to our level. It's just the general plan just got announced, and now the details are going to start coming out. Anyway, the rest of you?
That's one detail they did put out to us, is we will be wearing them.
Outside too?
When does it
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not outside.
Okay. Kyle, what?
When are you guys all starting with kids?
After Labor Day.
The
Okay.
24th of August.
So that's like 2 weeks before Texas getting a
So
jump start on us.
I was actually really thinking about a shield just so kids could see my facial
Yeah.
expression.
Absolutely.
And
That's
it's most of our community, and that's actually something I'm concerned with, is with all the kids with face masks on. That's how I read kids that need help, or you try to catch those kids that are frustrated or, need some extra. So you read their facial expressions as well, so you can gauge how things are going. So I'm a little bit worried about that.
yeah.
We were
Okay.
told, I think we were told a combination of both is okay. I'm the same way. I want kids to be able to see my face, especially the young ones. But I think if we're at a safe distance, we're able to do a mask, still be able to talk and communicate. But, if a kid comes up, maybe have a mask that we can pull up real fast and kind of have a combination of both. But I don't know that we're really supposed to do just a shield. So I don't know. There's some gray area there with us.
Okay. My wife was just talking about she got a mask today, or not a mask, a shield that she said was super comfortable. And she was describing, I haven't seen it yet, but if it is really comfortable, I'll put it out there, what brand and whatnot. Because that's the big thing is for me, if I'm going to wear something all day, every day, it's got to be somewhat comfortable. Tough to
I've
manage.
got my Green Bay Packer mask ready.
You're which one?
Yeah.
My Green Bay Packer mask.
Oh my word.
You actually beat me. I was going to put on my son has a NASA space helmet,
Yeah.
but I'm going to trash that and get a Green Bay Packer mask.
I was thinking Darth Vader would be a good one to have.
So the first question to dive into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to do, what strategies are you using to set up your teaching space with this first week of school starting? Whether it's the gym, outdoors, or if you're in a classroom or if you're in a closet.
I've been told I'm able to use my gym. Again, we're doing the hybrid. So essentially we're going to have half our kids. I think in my head, the most I'll have at a time is 10 to 12. I think I heard this on, and maybe I saw it somewhere online, but getting floor tape and gridding out the gym floor. I actually had about 4 or 5 rolls of floor tape that I used, but I only did half of the gym just to start. And I made essentially 56 boxes that were 6 feet apart. I think we're more concerned. Once the kids get there, I think we'll be fine. I think our school is more concerned with the whole drop off and pickup policies, scanning temperatures, asking the questions, and trying to get kids to school. But there is a period in the morning where there's a 10-minute overlap where kids are going to have to go somewhere. And it's not all of them. It's just some of the bus riders that get there. So my principal and I decided, let's try to do this grid on the gym floor. And that way, if there's 15 to 20 to 25 kids that get there early in the morning, they will have a place to go in the gym and be safely 6 feet apart visually on the floor. And then I will use that again in my classes and do stuff with that if we're not outside, but try to get outside if we can. But if I'm inside, at least I'll have a grid to use and for kids to see where their space is and all that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. I think we're going to have to really drill into these kids, how to stay away from each other. I'm K4. So I'm more worried about kindergartners, first graders. I think second, third, and fourth will be okay. They'll be able to understand a little better. I personally have a fourth grader and a second grader. They're used to wearing their mask. We've been doing that a little bit, and I think they get it. But I worry about the youngers, the 5 to 6-year-olds, and how they're going to do walking in the hallways. Now, everything else in the school, breakfast, lunch is going to be provided in school or in their classrooms. I'm sorry. So it's going to be brought to their classrooms. I think our teachers have been told, they're not going to take bathroom breaks as a class. They're going to send them 1 or 2 at a time. So it's going to be rough on them to sit in the classroom. We're going to be 8 to 1 with kids, so 5 hours. I think it'll be
Oh,
tough for
interesting.
them to, one, sit there that long. Okay. And two, just, keeping them in the classrooms. I'm going to try to encourage our teachers to use, you guys have probably heard the brain breaks or the brain busters or the, stuff like that. Just, I worry about the kids sitting too long and getting uptight in the classrooms, but I don't know. We'll see.
You think the
So-
teachers will utilize bringing the kids outside for little breaks here and there?
So I kind of again, we started Monday. Teachers started Monday. We've got all week to kind of plan and do, virtual and prepare and do all that kind of stuff. I kind of caught wind that I think each grade level will get one 15 to 20 minute recess during that 5-hour time. They will not get PE every day. So our exploratory classes will be broken up between the 2 days that they're in session. So I don't know. I hope they can get outside for a little bit longer. But I think there might be one recess time in there. So
Yeah, even if you can encourage teachers just to take the class on a walk or, go out
yeah,
and I don't know, look at the lady.
be able to take their masks off and kind of breathe a little bit. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Because even just to walk out there, walk around, take the mask off, even if they didn't do an activity, even just
Right.
that, getting out of the classroom a little bit is, teachers are smart.
Absolutely.
They'll figure that out.
And again, I personally think we'll be in session for a week, maybe 2, and then I think we'll get shut down and go full remote. Our teachers have been told, the first week they're going to test and test and test because we haven't been in school since March. So we've got to see where our kids are academically.
Welcome
We
back,
got a
kids.
grant that, yeah, we got a grant to where if kids need them, they'll be able to have Chromebooks. So I think we're going to teach the kids how to log on, get onto all these online, resources and be able to communicate if we do go full remote. So I think it's anticipated in our district. So I think it's just a matter of time.
Wow. Well, I hope you're wrong.
I do too.
I hope the numbers stay low enough. You keep contact with those kids, physical contact.
I do too.
Oh man, I think they need
So
it.
but that's heavily here is when we go back that we're on the verge of going to a full distance learning within weeks. So it's number one, how am I going to set up my gym, but how am I going to set up my gym to maximize that 2 weeks to build relationships, to get to know kids in that short 2 weeks? Because I mean, we haven't seen the kids since March.
Yep.
So that's I guess that's on the forefront of my head is how am I going to use those first couple of weeks to maximize so I can gain momentum into distance learning.
Yeah. Any insights into that, you guys? Any thoughts that come to your head right away?
Well, you said you made a very good point about like trying to get as much bang for your buck in the short amount of time that you have, because you might not be there for more than a couple of weeks before you're home. I mean, I can tell you that being that I just found out today what a tentative plan is for my district. I mean, I can tell you that I would like to start the very beginning in my gym, like maybe for a class or two, and then head straight outside so that there's some continuity with boundary lines and space and keeping spacing and learning basic rules of the gym. But I also agree that like we have to be aware that the rules of the gym are wonderful, but then if the kids are home, you're talking about a completely different set of rules because the activities are different, your spacing is different, your curriculum is now different. I think just maybe getting to know those kids as as best as you can, trying to connect with them, with a 6-foot barrier to you and the kid. But, it's trying to get to reach out to every kid. I mean, again, in my case, I will most likely have no more than 12. And I think I could definitely hit upon every child in the class where I'm talking to them. Hey, it's great seeing you. How was your summer? We're going to do the best we can. We're going to have a great time today and review everything. I mean, I do think it's possible in a short time, unless you have like one day of school and then all of a sudden, oops, you got to go home,
Right. Well, in that 2 weeks, how many times would you see your kids?
Oh God. Well, in the model that I'm in, really not many.
Right. That's what I'm thinking.
I guess 3 to 4 times
Yeah.
possibly. I mean,
in
if
2 weeks?
well, I mean, we're starting on a Wednesday,
Yeah.
and then we start the schedule, so it's maybe less, maybe 3 times.
Yeah.
You know, I guess fingers crossed, hoping that we get more than 2 weeks before they say, "Oh, sorry, you know, we can't do it."
Yeah. That would be max for me. If we saw the kids twice, we'd be lucky in those 2 weeks. So, but that brings up, I mean, to kind of continue this line of thought of, do you guys have any games or activities that you think would be really good where you only have, like Jamie said, a short period of time, you might only be able to see them 1, 2, 3, 4 times. How do you get to know kids and still establish those things that you want to establish and keep them active? Any games you guys use now that are really good for that come to your mind?
I don't want to eat up all my time and spend all my effort going over rules and those sort of things when they may not be, like you said, Don, pertinent if they're going to be at home. So it's like you said, trying to get the bang for the buck, and trying to build relationships and have a lot of fun while trying to teach the social distancing and all that, all at the same time.
Yeah.
I think going along with that, I think there has to be, and again, I'm K4, I think there's going to have to be some, anticipation of shutting down kids. Hey, not only are you going to get math and spelling and science and all this stuff virtually, but, I'm going to be sending some activities or some things to do to keep you active at home. So don't forget about PE, don't forget about music, don't forget about art and all that kind of stuff. So
you're kind of going to set your expectation for the gym and the outside, but as well as that, you're kind of setting up, if we go home, don't forget about me type of
right.
thing. I like that idea.
So when it comes, and Kyle, you had expressed some concern about, teaching that your kindergarten and first graders, that social distancing piece. And I had the opportunity to experience a unique observation. I was at Lifetime Fitness where I work out, and they have an outdoor pool. And I have a fourth grader, and they have water slides and stuff, and they have a lifeguard on the top and a lifeguard on the bottom. So I just sat there and watched, and there must have been 30, 40 kids that are waiting in line for this. And there's no adults from the top to the bottom, but they have the little stickers on the steps as you go up. And I was watching these kids do social distancing without anybody telling them anything. I just thought that was fascinating to see. Now, when they got to the bottom and there was no stickers, there was no more social distancing. They're all bunched up, but you had little kids helping each other follow the little stickers up, and there wasn't an adult telling them anything. And I said the only reason they had the adult on the top and the bottom was to make sure 40 kids didn't end up in the middle of the slide.
Yeah, that's encouraging, Jamie.
Yeah, it was fascinating. Now we weren't there soon enough in the process to see how they established that. When we came in, it was already established. So maybe they went through that with some of the kids that are there often.
But it brings up kind of more what we're kind of trying to talk about here, Tom, where you just got here. So we're trying to talk about establishing those first needs, which is number one, how we're going to set up your gym or how you're going to set up your teaching space outside. And Jamie just mentioned, I think a key thing here is visuals, stickers, or Kyle was talking about the grid we've been talking about for several weeks. Any other ideas as far as things that could really help you as a teacher and the students in that manner be able to not have to be monitored all the time?
I'm thinking of getting spray paint and spraying like X's or spots outside. I don't know if that's going to work, but.
Yep.
No, I think that's a really good idea. I mean, you can. I mean, if you have access to I forget what they call that, line paint or grass paint or something.
Yep.
Right. Just to square off your space, especially if you have a lot of fields. But I agree. I mean, there's your poly spots right there. You can make grids and X's and spaces that you need to.
Yeah, and then the kids can't pick them up and throw them at each other.
Exactly. That's what I did a summer program at my school, and I tried spots, and they became frisbees, and then I tried cones, and they were kicked everywhere. So I thought paint might work a little better if I tried that one.
Yeah.
But you can learn how to stack your standards too, because when they're kicking the cones, you can run a formative kicking assessment right there.
I was in touch with our other district elementary teachers, and we're talking about setting up a date when we just all get together and go from one school to the other with the paint, with the thing, and we help each other. You know, one's measuring, one's putting something down, so and the other's doing the painting, and you just kind of help each other out, set up these grids. And we're thinking maybe soccer, it would be a unit we might be able to get by with, starting with, and within our soccer field, paint squares so it'll look more like foosball than soccer, that kind of thing. But again, teaming together, using each other as a resource to get that set up. So Audrey, that goes right along with what you were saying is, get it set up and paint it so it's there permanently.
And Stacy, when you were talking about, like, if you're going to start with soccer, if you had grids outside, it's a really easy visual to say you cannot have two kids in the same box at any given time.
Yeah.
So if you had it all squared out, that's really simple for a kid to say, all right, if I'm heading in this direction, Tommy's in this spot, I can't do that. I have to, it's a change of direction, or practice your trapping and then turning or whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah, it's possible the soccer unit will be the best it ever was, because they're going to be forced to pass, and they'll get it, and the grid will be there. Like you said, it's a visual. I have to stop here. I have to pass it now to the next person up, the next level up, and that type of a thing. And I don't know, maybe it'll really, really work on teamwork and passing more than I have in my other soccer units.
Stacy, I think for assessment purposes, we'll call that spatial awareness, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's an excellent place to start. And we put a nice fancy name on it. That's exactly what we're doing. You're right.
Now, is everybody planning on, and you guys might not know this yet, is everybody planning on using equipment, allowed to, or don't know yet?
I'm hoping so. Man, I hope they don't shut that down.
Yeah.
And at this point, we haven't been told anything about sharing equipment, or it seems like we're approaching our face-to-face as if it was just a regular school day.
Yeah.
And doing our best to minimize contact and those sort of things, but it's not an absolute or a expectation, I guess is the best word.
Yeah, we have a solution that we're supposed to wipe down everything with in between classes, so we're going to try that.
They're tied to, there's so much gray area there. They say you can, they tell us we can, but we got to disinfect. But we're going to have 20-minute class periods. It's like, I'm not going to have time to do that. So I'm really kind of trying to plan to see how much I can do without equipment, movements, dance, yoga, using projectors, something inside, or like I said earlier, just simply, get outside. By the time the kids get to the gym, get outside, got 15, 18 minutes, let them walk around, take their masks off, breathe a little bit, and have that be their break, picking up trash, just kind of, using that as time to kind of get away from the classroom and have a little bit of freeness there. So
yeah,
just kind of curious about the equipment and stuff. And, I think soccer could work, especially if we really emphasize don't touch anything with your hands. So I think soccer is doable with the feet and knees and stuff. So,
yeah. Jamie, you made a comment in that section about masks, and a really valid concern you have about not being able to see kids and their facial expressions. And you kind of mentioned some things you do. You want to expand on that just a little bit about how you really hone in on kids' facial expressions?
Well, yeah, I mean, number one, it helps me with names. Just seeing kids' faces, and in my fear with so many kids, they have masks on. I'm going to struggle with names.
Oh, true.
But number two, I actually have really, really bad hearing damage, and those. And I really rely on facial expressions to proactively help kids versus actually hearing what they're saying.
Yeah.
You know, or even just, I mean, anybody's like that. You look across the gym and you can see somebody that's struggling
Yeah.
just based on their facial expression, or see something that some kid did really, really cool. And my fear is not being able to see those facial expressions and not being able to be as proactive and becoming more reactive.
Yeah. Now you have to wait till you see the tears in their eyes to know they're really struggling, and that could be tough.
Yeah, absolutely, for them, because now, I mean, you're creating a negative experience for the student.
Right. Now, there's a chance when we're not really close with students, we'll be able to wear shields. And I think that's super important that they see our face as well and that not be covered up. But I hadn't thought about it from the angle you were just presenting about how we need that feedback as well. And I don't think we're going to get all kids wearing shields. So,
Not a chance.
no. So, no, I thought that was super good insight you had on that from an angle that I had not thought about. The other thing you said, you were kind of on with this whole section. You had some really good insights when you
I had an
talked
extra
about-
cup of coffee.
Yeah. You talked about the lessons that or at the beginning we might only have 2-3 lessons, and to make sure we make use of those is really important to set up what might come. As you know, as soon as 3 weeks into this, you could be straight distance learning. If this whole thing explodes statewide, they could shut the whole state down. We don't know.
Yeah, and that's a very real thing. I mean, it's almost something that you should expect versus predict. And you know, so if you know that you're only going to see these kids for 3 weeks or have them for 4 lessons, does that change how you approach?
Yeah.
And that's where you want to maximize that activity. So it's finding activities that are going to reinforce your expectations and the structures in class, but also kind of setting yourself up for that distance learning, building those relationships so that you can ride the wave like we did last year.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're kind of setting up your expectations for what you're doing now, but you're also setting some groundwork for a transition if that's necessary. So I really think it's important to think about. And again, I hadn't thought that far ahead to think of, oh my word, there's a good possibility we could jump from every kid in to every kid out in a matter of a couple of weeks. It could just happen. It could go statewide, boom, and nobody has a choice. It's just, that's what we're doing. So I don't want to paint a pessimistic, whole scenario here, but it really could happen. And why not be prepared for it by taking full advantage of those first few meetings face to face?
Well, and information is power, and that's a great point. It's just you have the information in front of you. We've lived this. It's not a surprise anymore. So why not start to prepare for it? And
yeah,
we don't have to prepare for it filled with anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, just look how much we accomplished in the past.
Absolutely. And to kind of shift that whole thing from anxiety to a real positive note is your story about the Lifetime Fitness pool. That was so encouraging to me that you kind of said, I just step back and watch these kids and they're helping each other. They're staying apart. They're staying on their stickers. And that kind of highlights what we had just kind of went through about all the different ways to set up your gym and your outdoor spaces.
Yeah, and we had found visuals and routines are going to be the keys. And that's not some magical secret to a successful physical education teacher. That comes in your teaching 101 classes.
Yeah, that's very true. So, well, in this next section, I kind of had this question brewing for several weeks now. Again, as we think about the different types of activities, the easier ones are going to be the ones where we don't isolate kids, but we kind of keep them in their own space and they drill and they dance and they do exercises, and those will be the easier things to do, and that'll be fine for a while. But to me, that's not the magic of PE, and that's not the magic of what I bring to class. Usually is I bring kids together to have a ball together. And maybe that just won't be able to happen. I don't know. I might have to just get that through my head. But this discussion started to take place where I kind of threw that out there of, is there ways that we still can get kids to interact and still follow the the 6 feet rule and the mask rule and still keep kids safe, but have them still interacting with each other. So that's where this question is heading in this next session.
I kind of share your concern there, Stacy, especially with like, I'm not quite sure how like cooperative activities are going to look, and I consider that to be a huge part of my curriculum. So there's some apprehension there for me also to still be able to include that in my curriculum, but still be within the guidelines.
Yeah. Kyle, what do you think? How do you wrestle with that? Because you were kind of talking about wanting to go to these others, and I'm kind of saying, yeah, that's good for a while, but if you do that for so long, how are we going to maintain the excitement for
I
feet?
totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think
Wrestling.
the games and the cooperation needs to be there. But I mean, I hate to say it personally, in my district, I don't think it's going to happen.
You know,
I don't think we're going to be able to do volleyball and do badminton and do all these things to where they are, sharing these things and working together as a team. I see it being individual, maybe not so much individual. I think there are some things that I can do, that you can do with partners, kind of, mirroring each other or rock, paper, scissors. Yeah. But I think personally where I'm at, I don't know that there's going to be that major use of equipment, teaching skills, shooting basketballs, everybody having their own stuff. I just don't see it happening. But again, I really hope it will change and I'll be able to, but it's going to be tough. But I agree. I totally agree with you.
Okay. So with that in mind, are there some fun games we can do where there's minimal equipment or zero, and they do stay 6 feet apart? One that comes to mind is like red light, green light. Kids love it. And if you're outside, spread them out, and you can do red light, green light, and I think stuff like that would work. That's a thing in my mind. Any other ideas of games for people that are listening that we could do?
I did a game with my older kids this summer. I don't know the name of it, but they get in a big circle, socially distant. There's a ball used. There's a person in the center of the circle who's still 6 feet away from everybody. And everybody has a number. And that person throws the ball up in the air, calls out a number. The person whose number it is has to get in there and catch that ball and then yell stop. Everybody is running away from the circle, and then he throws the ball at one of them who's closest to him, and then that person is now in the center. But I had to wipe down the ball after each time we did it. So, but they enjoyed it. They loved that game. They were like, we got to do this again. And so they really enjoyed it. And I felt like I was doing as much as I can by keeping them socially distant, big game, wide space, but I don't know.
So you were still able to do it because you just stopped it for a second, wiped down the ball, and then went on again.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, genius. I'll say. And like that was my question. Did the kids still have a blast? I bet
they enjoyed it. They didn't even want to go back in, and we want to play it again. I'm like, it's your time to go in. Sorry. Yeah. So they really liked it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's kind of what my gut is getting games like that, even if we have to interrupt the game or whatever. That's great, Audrey. That's a great example.
So one thing I do want to do, the cooperative games to start the year as much as I can, just to get to know the kids and create that excitement. And one activity I always did was it was just an obstacle course where the students had a partner, and the partner was blindfolded, had their eyes closed. You had to guide them through the obstacle course, so it was, and their partner could only tell them what to do. And the obstacle course was just like, you'd have to step inside a hula hoop or try not to step on the lines and those sort of things. I've heard it called the minefield too. But I was thinking that could easily, respecting social distance, it's, to Kyle's point there, it's minimal or no equipment, because you could actually just do it with just the lines. Don't step on a line.
I actually did that game this summer too.
And to go, if you're in New York, like Don, the farther you are from your partner, it actually creates more of a challenge. And that's something I do with my fifth graders is they're actually on the opposite end of the gym. So now they have to shout and yell and get excited to try to get their partner to move who's on the other side of the gym.
Yeah. Audrey, you said you did that game. How did that go for you?
It was good. I had one person who was guiding the other one verbally through an obstacle course, but he was far apart. And so he was yelling, they were all yelling to their partners, go left, go right.
Okay.
You're running into something, Anyhow, it worked really good. They liked that one game too, very much.
Fantastic.
So in tag games, I think we could still do, especially if the kids use, a 6-foot pool noodle, if you're a tagger, because tagging inherently stresses, spatial awareness.
Yeah. No, I like that idea of tag. I usually use that at the beginning of the school year, especially to establish with the young kids, my squads, because we only have kids once every 4 days, plus the weekends, that can be 6 days before I see them again. And as you know, with kindergartners, that, they're not going to have a clue where they were sitting. But that's my idea of practice. Instead of having them sit in their squads, all right, everybody go run, mix up, and then come back to your squads. We play 1 minute tag. I give, 5 pool noodles out. They go play tag. And then when the music stops, they all come back and they have to find their exact dot to sit on. That's kind of, again, what I'm looking for, other ideas like that of establishing routine, but the kids don't know that it's what I'm doing. They think we're just playing tag. Any other ideas for establishing some of your initial routines, 6-foot distance, masks? I'm trying to think of, where to sit, how you come in, how you line up at the end, any of those. And do you guys have any games or gamifying it in some way that you can do it rather than just talking at kids?
At the beginning of the year, the way that I typically start my year, I do about a week to start with like orientation stuff, spatial awareness, personal space, general space, freezing on the signal. We do an activity at the beginning of the year where they have to go from one side of the gym to the other without, going past our borderline. So with our younger kids, I have these, I make up from Toy Story. I have these different signs. So one group is the Woody group, the Buzz group, the Bullseye group, Ham group. You just lift it up. If that's the kids group, they run to the other side, they slow down, they stop on the line. So like stuff that I would normally do in the gym, I think I could easily still accomplish that way, because I still want them to be able to stay within our boundary lines. I still want them to be able to move without crashing into others. I also tend to do, like some of you mentioned, the spots. So we have squad spots, and I want kids moving quickly, and I try to do it in under a certain set amount of time. So whether it's to stand on the middle circle, if I yell fire drill, the kids run over to line up where we would go to line up. Like all that stuff that I would normally do, I think I can still accomplish, because I still want to get those things set in stone. And then I usually go in week 2 right into my tag unit, because I use that as part of my cooperative activities. And then that's where the challenge is going to come in, whether or not we will even be allowed to touch another, have a kid touch another kid with a noodle, because I don't even know if that's seen by the higher ups as, no, you can't do that. It's not physical distance. But getting some sort of, and whatever you would normally do, I think at the very beginning, as long as the kids are not on top of each other, I still think it's still a worthwhile way to incorporate, whether it's like my toy.
Yeah. How about the rest of you? How do you start your year to really establish those regular norms? And then can you do the same principle to expand to these new norms?
I tried something last year going back to like squad lines. It's called whistle 1, 2, 3. So once they're in their lines, you can blow your whistle once, twice, or 3 times, or 4 or 5, depending on how many kids you have in a line. So if you're the third person in line, you blow your whistle 3 times. Every one of those persons, I think that's right, essentially gets to run around the gym or in your area without touching anybody, without doing anything, while everybody else is frozen. then you blow your whistle again, whether it be once or 5 or 4. So each person has that designated number. You know, you blow it twice, everybody else freezes. The second person will then get to go run and you know, run around the gym. So at the end, once you blow your whistle however many times, you know, you got kids spread out all over the gym, then you can bring them back, see where they are, you know, get them back into their lines. And then, you know, you can do that a couple times. I use that as a warm-up activity, and also like to get them back in their lines and things like that. So.
All right, I like it. Others? Tom, what do you do to establish your norms? Can you explain that in a short sentence or two, or?
I think it's kind of already been brought up. I think the freezing part is really big. So practicing that routine, and a lot of our school is kind of follows the responsive classroom, you know, elementary K-5 models. So a lot of the first 6 weeks, especially with K-2, is just modeling and demonstrating the behavior that you want them to get accustomed to. So, you know, that's going to be a little different, but I think like you said before, Stacy, we still want to keep those beginning of the year routines as normal as possible, so we can kind of get them going and being what we want them to be and what we want them to know, and how we want them to respond to our directions and so forth.
Right. And I guess for me, I'm just always looking for ways to make it fun. Take the mundane and make it fun. You know, because we have to get those things established. Otherwise, nothing's fun if there's no norms. And so that's why I'm looking for other ideas always of how you can creatively make something, make it fun. Take the mundane, make it fun, I guess. We can keep going on these types of subjects, but another thing just popped into my head are, if you have to wear masks inside, I was talking to my wife about this. I'll give her credit for it, but she was talking about maybe even as part of your gym setup, establishing some places along the side where if you're starting to feel overheated or winded, you can pull yourself out, you know, and pull your mask down, type of a thing where, okay, I don't want you to feel claustrophobic in class and afraid to take your mask off because, you know, that's all they've been hearing for the last 3 weeks is wear your mask, wear your mask. So like I have a stage connected. I could maybe set up 5 dots where they're all apart on the stage and saying, hey, if you're playing a game and you're winded, go up there, stand on one of the dots and pull it down and just trying to establish, it's important to wear your mask, but it's not more important than me yelling at you or, you know, I just want to have a happy medium in there where, yeah, we want kids to follow, but I don't want kids to be afraid to pull a mask off. Can you imagine going home and spending a day where you could hardly breathe, but you were just afraid that the teacher was going to yell at you for pulling down your mask? I just don't want things like that to happen.
Well, and Stacey, those areas to do that would be probably important for your asthmatic kids that
for sure
need to do that, and that's getting to be more and more of our kids. So
yeah, and for your highly competitive kids, that a mask isn't going to slow them down until they're about ready to drop, and to give them permission to go there. I mean, some of us were probably that kid. If we had this when we were kids, we wouldn't have stopped unless the teacher purposely put a spot and made it the norm that, yeah, kids go up there all the time to take 5 seconds, 10 seconds to breathe, and then they come down or whatever. But it's again, establish that as part of the norm. Have you guys thought about that as far as part of your gym setup? And I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking about. What else do we need to have set up in our gym besides a grid? Any other things you're going to put in your gym? Visuals or otherwise on the walls or on the floors?
A shelf for the water bottles. The kids are coming in with water bottles.
Oh, they are?
They're shutting all the water fountains off in our school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
sure they are.
actually, glad you mentioned that, Audrey. Same thing at my school. They're shutting down the water fountains.
I'm sure all the way around they will. Good idea. Oh, yeah.
So another thing I was thinking. Go ahead, Nick, Kyle.
I asked my principal the other day about that. to bring water bottles. And yeah, they're going to shut our water fountains off so kids will be able to bring theirs. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm going to have to, designate, space, certain areas for them to put those and make sure they're spread out. And I don't know if that's a simple X on the wall or on the floor by the wall or something, but yeah, it's a good point.
Where do they fill their water bottles?
So I think in their
Toilets.
classrooms, they're going to have, I don't even know what they are, automatic water dispensers that we spent probably hundreds and thousands of dollars on. So
Wow.
they'll have to have filled when they get there. So.
Okay. Jamie, you were going to say something earlier. What was that?
Oh, I was going to say, it flew out of my head. A cleaning station for equipment at some point, some sort of cleaning station, because that's something even down to the kindergarten level I'd like to eventually get as part of the routine. And I just think it's coming to my school is kids helping with that transition of where we play a game, we use the equipment, then we clean it up, just like if we were putting it away.
Yeah. There's that established practice routines over and over.
Which, I'm actually, there's a side of me that's I don't want to say cynical or fun. The funny side of me is I just actually can't wait to watch kindergartners for the first time, see how that train wreck is going to go.
We should all just make sure we have a videotape going just to have some good footage to put out. Oh, that's true.
It's because they're so literal, and they will whatever directions you give, they will do that to the absolute letter or become really, really creative.
Yeah.
I'm just actually can't wait to see what they come up with.
Okay.
Oh, can I say something about the mask real quick?
Yeah.
Our school, they're not making them wear masks until the age of 10. So everybody who's below the age of 10 does not have to wear a mask.
Wow.
Is
What
that
about you
based on your
guys?
birthday? Is that based on your birth date or maturity?
You're trying to slide in there, aren't you, Jamie?
Yeah, straight in there.
Oh, that's interesting. Is that research based that they're magical age of 10, or just what they thought was reasonable, or?
I think our governor said that based on whatever. I don't know.
Well, if your governor said it, then it must be research based. That's kind of cool, though.
What state is that, Audrey?
Texas.
Texas.
Yeah. Texas is kind of a country of its own, so you know how that goes. I learned that. I only say that because that's what Texans told me. So
We are.
Hey, Stacey, you made a great point about the need for those interactive games and the importance of what that is with our FIAD class, because we need to hit those standards with students working with each other. And, I think it is important to respect the social distancing and the safety guidelines if that's what your district requires you to do. But we've got to figure out those creative ways to get interaction with student and teacher, but most importantly too, student to student, because that's really what they missed during the social distancing was that interaction.
yeah, I think you just nailed it there, Jamie. I wish I could say things as concise as you do. I seem to like to ramble, but it's just on my heart big that we're going to find things to keep kids busy. That won't be of trouble. But can we make FIAD class as engaging as it was before? I think we can, but it's going to take some extra work and some extra creativity.
That's just it. We've got to find ways. Some of the biggest strengths of helping kids learn is peer tutoring. If a student's struggling, you might partner up with a student that has mastered the standards, so that you have that peer tutoring going on and the cooperation that happens. And we talked about the SEL, and that cooperation and communication is all part of social emotional learning. We've got to make sure that we're providing those opportunities.
Yeah. And some of the things that I've mentioned on this podcast and others about even just mirroring, even if they're 12 feet away, 15 feet away, they're interacting. The game you brought up with
The minefield.
Walking through an obstacle course, they're interacting. It's that type of a thing where I think we need to make sure we're doing, even if they have to do it at a distance to keep the safe distance, that's fine. Let's find those creative games. And a few of them were mentioned here, and I'm hoping in the future podcasts we can really bring out some more of those as well. One of the things I was thinking about is I was listening to all these games, and I'm hoping people will stop their podcast and go back and listen, because it took me 2-3 times to really listen. There were several really great activities that were mentioned by the panel here, and it kind of hit me at the end, kind of thinking, you know what really good teachers do? They teach, they don't tell. When we were talking about the rules,
I like that.
I love the illustrations, Tom and and Don, and I think each person kind of gave one that they're not just telling the rules and then expecting them to follow. They creatively find ways. What was it? The one you mentioned? Well, I yell firehouse or fire, and then they do this. Just a little thing like that makes it fun, and it makes it a game or gamifies it a little bit, and then the kids learn it so much better. But he's giving them a chance to practice. He's not just telling, he's teaching.
And that's with anything that we do. What games activities can we come up with to reinforce staying 6 feet apart? What games activities can we come up with that reinforce keeping your mask on? Just those little things, and we don't have those answers yet, but the key word there is yet.
Yet.
As we get on social media, as we listen to our podcasts and start connecting with other teachers, those answers start to come.
Yeah. And what's going to be really interesting, and I know this is big on your heart, Jamie, is not just you, but all throughout the building, how are teachers going to handle when a kid doesn't have his mask on, or doesn't, whether it's on purpose because kids do that, or by accident? How are we going to address that situation? And I know it's big on your heart, like I said, that we keep the child in mind, that they're a person, they're a little person, they have feelings, and that relationship with them is more important than, I want to say, a silly rule. It's not a silly rule, but then a rule. You want to kind of expand on what I know?
Well, yeah, because I can come at it from two different angles, two different life experiences. I can take the life experience in the Marine Corps, and when somebody is not following a direction, there's a distinct way to address that situation that is actually ineffective in the school. And I hope people take the other side of the road, and if those things are happening, remembering that they're kids and they have anxiety too. They're getting this anxiety from every direction and from everywhere, and use it as a teachable moment. Again, teach, don't tell.
Yeah.
And just use it as a teachable moment, and find ways, just like if we're playing a game or activity and somebody's not exactly playing by the rules, how can we address that situation and still make it a learnable moment without having the child be belittled.
Yeah. I think that's really, really well said, how you phrased that. Tom kind of indicated a piece of how to prepare for that with the modeling in his building that they do. And then I just think also for me, and probably for other people, I need to think through this ahead of time. How am I going to respond when a kid doesn't do this? And if I can do that, have it thought through ahead of time, I know I'll be at my best with the pre-thought out things, rather than reacting like, oh my gosh, the kid, 4 kids have their masks down and now I'm reacting. Well, if I thought through this ahead of time, I can respond the way I want to, in the way that you just described, rather than me just flying off the handle.
And I would challenge educators out there, how they've handled situations in the past or how they're going to handle them. I mean, if they struggle with those classroom management situations in the past, this is nothing new.
Yeah.
We've had gum in the classrooms that we've had to deal with. We've had passing notes. Now we have cell phones, earbuds, iPods. I mean, you name it. There's always something. It's how do you deal with it? How do you maintain that positive environment and still reinforce the expectations as a school?
Yeah. And do you have any hints for somebody? Let's say they heard you just say that, and they know in their heart they've actually struggled with some of these things you just mentioned, and you just told them they're going to have trouble with this too. Any thoughts or suggestions to prepare for this year?
As you prepare for the year, it's a mindset.
Okay.
It really is. It's just approaching the year with the kid in the center.
Okay.
And we can have our anxieties, but we can't let those anxieties affect the students. And that if we're truly doing things for the kids, don't just say it. Make sure that when we make decisions or when we address situations, that we are truly keeping the child in the center of that thought.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's really good insight. And to go with that, if you're going to make big changes, you're going to fail sometimes. You're going to do it the way you want to sometimes and have grace for when you don't, and then step back into it, apologize to the kid if you need to, step back, and then get back into the groove that you want to be in. And we're all going to fall out of it. We're all going to have those times. Well,
And remember those, because those become some great "I'll never do that again" stories.
yes, they do. And we can maybe hear them on a podcast sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
But speaking of those anxieties, it kind of feeds us into this last section. And I know this podcast is getting a bit long, or it's a bit longer than we like to have them. But I just didn't want to cut this last section out. It's Jamie brought up the ideas of fears and asked the panel what fears they have. And I kind of expected some pat answers, but we didn't get them. There's some deep thoughts, deep thought out fears, I guess. It's kind of a weird way of saying it, but it's just well worth listening to this last section. So I hope you stick with us and take a listen to this last section.
What's your top concerns going into the school year? If you can narrow it down to one or two things. And just go, because this is actually a two-part question. The first part of it here is just what's your single greatest concern as we move into this upcoming school year? Sounds like Audrey, yours is just simply the schedule.
Yeah. Mine is probably getting in trouble, because I'm a little bit cynical at some of this. If they get overly strict, and I say overly, that's according to me. If they really clamp down and they're saying, okay, no equipment, no this, no, you can't do that. There's a certain point where I'm going to go and I'm going to try some things and I might just get in a little bit of trouble that, I might think something's fine. And another parent will go, oh my gosh, you had the kids play tag. I'm thinking, well, I had a 6-foot noodle. I had this, that's what I mean is I want the kids to still have fun. So I'm going to do what I think is kosher, but my opinion might be different than somebody else's. And that kid goes home and says, yeah, we played tag and we had a 6-foot noodle. And a parent goes, sees it differently, comes down, and then I get in trouble for that. I don't think I'll lose my job. I just don't want to, number one, I don't want to get in trouble, but on the other hand, I don't want to cause that parent stress either, just because they see the world different than I do. So I don't know, I'm kind of running that line a little bit of, I put fun over safety a little bit more than other people do. I'm going to cut that part out of the podcast too, just so you know, but I'd rather see kids having fun. If they, a little bit of hurt, we do scooters and they run over their fingers. I'm okay with that, because the fun you have is overridden by a little owie on a finger. Other teachers see it differently. Other parents see it differently. And I just don't want to run into that conflict, I guess that's what I'm saying. I see you smirking, Tom.
I had 2 separate kids lose teeth last year from scooters.
Is that right?
One of them got up laughing and said, I can't find my tooth. So I hear you, Stacy.
Oh, that's fun. With a big smile on their face, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Other concerns?
I'm honestly concerned with shutting down and going full remote.
Okay.
I worry for the kids, and I worry about being able to provide stuff remotely,
I share that. Mine's the balance between safety and then going to the distance learning, and the social aspect for kids, I fear.
Yeah. For us, we can put it together. We're teachers, we're professionals, we can figure it out, but for the kids, it's just not going to be as good. No matter how good we are at providing distance, it's not as good as, everything you just said, Jamie, about being in person and all the things we were talking about, spatial awareness and all that is so much harder to teach from.
And then it's the giant snowball effect is where does this giant snowball roll in the direction of our profession?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
But let's spice up. So what are you most excited for to start the year? And personally, mine, just to break the ice, I'm most excited just to be back with the kids. And that's, I actually am actually the most excited than any part of the 15 years I've been teaching.
Yes.
Most excited to get back with the kids.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I definitely
I agree.
agree. I agree, Jamie.
Backtrack a little bit. I think one other thing that I'm concerned about is high fiber, knucks, hugs. Kids want hugs. I give hugs. I'm worried that I'm going to mess up and forget, once we see them, and, not get in trouble, but just have to
Yeah.
remind myself, like, hey, we can't do that anymore. We can't high five. We can't, because you hear it, kids that don't get hugs, they need them and they'll want them and they'll want to be touching us, but we're going to have to tell kids, hey, we can't touch each other. And that breaks my heart.
And how do we do that and still get the same message across without the hug? You know what I mean? The message is, hey, I love you. I want to contact too, but we just can't. And without that, oh, can't touch, there's different ways of saying that. How can we get the message across that we do love them, we do care for them, we do want to touch, we just can't? I suppose it's kind of.
But I would take it one step further and go to a fear of mine, or something I'm very concerned of, is that when all these kids come back to school, that we're actually putting more stress on them by how we're trying to teach our social distancing, how we're trying to keep them 6 feet apart and keep your mask on, where now they just come to school for 5 hours and just get absolutely badgered about everything that they should be, just constant redirection.
Yeah.
And, so I think personally in the gym, it's going to be finding ways to redirect like I would any other game. If a student isn't exactly following a rule or doing something wrong, whether maybe they're doing a skill wrong, how do you go there and give that corrective feedback or that guidance to help the student versus, shouting across the gym to put your mask on?
Whew. Jamie, you and I had touched on that in a private conversation earlier about how that could just be devastating to some of these kids if too many teachers are too rigid and uptight about all the rules and almost put the rules above the relationship. And like you said, hollering at a kid across the way to put his mask on. If that's the message they get with every teacher over and over and over, what's that going to do for kids are resilient, I get it, but just the overall feeling of being at school, like Jamie said, might be a feeling of more stress than just being at home. I don't know.
This summer when I was teaching the kids, they would come out one at a time to me, and I told them to give me a thumbs up if they're doing good or a thumbs down. And as they were walking past me, I talked to them if they had a thumbs down, what's going on with you today, as they walked over to a spot. So that was one way I tried to kind of connect with them without hugging or anything like that.
What do you think about developing like a distance knuckles or something fairly quick, or maybe even something special for the PE teacher? People have their special handshakes. It'd be fun if anybody develops a fun little activity, or it's got to be short because you got to be able to do it regular. It's something for the kids that it's just, hey, this, and it's kind of our thing type of a thing. And it's almost better than a hug. It's, I don't know, does that spur any ideas in people's minds with distance high five or a distance knuckles or a secret air handshake or I don't know. I bet you there's some PE teachers that are going to come up with some pretty cool stuff. I hope they share it on Twitter or other places. Yes, just to get that message across that, hey, school isn't about COVID. It's not about the rules. We care about you. We were talking about the units and standards or games that you might start with. We talked about, Kyle, you talked about maybe dance, fitness. What are some, and we talked about soccer. What other units would really lend themselves to be good, like the first 3-4 units to start with?
I think with the youngers, kindergarten, first grade, reemphasizing, reteaching locomotor skills,
Yeah. Good. Those will be
especially
those will be the easy-
kindergarten.
Yeah, those will be no
Especially kindergarten.
no equipment.
And
games.
just
Yep.
yeah, and not just doing it in one space or 6 feet apart, but I think if your class is small enough in numbers, you can still do the relay race type thing and let
Yeah.
them, go back and forth, and just
Great
as
idea.
long as you have markers to show where 6 feet apart is, or however long it has to be. But I think getting them active and doing that kind of stuff is still, you can probably still do that too. So locomotor skills.
Yeah. I like that. Anybody else? Units, or maybe get off the idea of units and get onto standards, like Kyle was just talking about, the locomotive skills. Any other standards? All the SEL types of standards stand out that we could emphasize those, the personal responsibility, and as long as we're building in routines and stuff, those things that go right along with the SEL would be really good to hammer on.
Well, I think too, Jamie, that our kids are going to be anxious enough as it is when they're coming back. So I think adding that SEL part to your lessons is tremendously important. And to give your kids the social emotional tools to cope with the stresses that they're going to be dealing with if they go back and are in school, I think is really important, as you said.
Yeah. Good, Tom.
I would say that kicks us into what next week, or what next week will look like for us. And a couple of things we want to touch on is really, like homework assignments. No equipment type games was one thing we wanted to kind of brainstorm and bring to the table next week. And then the idea of fitness and dance activities, to respect that social distancing, but how can we gamify fitness and dance activities to try to boost that engagement piece?
Yeah.
And then another thing to add to it is, with all that in mind, is to add that SEL, that social emotional learning, like Tom put there in the chat, hashtag health move minds.
Yeah.
So,
so that's where we'd like to go next week, is those 3 topics. If you can spread the word to other teachers to get them thinking, and get a few others on here. Otherwise, those will kind of be the topics we kind of cover. I want to respect your time. We'll hang out for a little bit afterwards, but I think we'll wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for being willing to kind of put this out. I think it's going to make a real nice podcast with just having everybody on here willing to share. You guys had some great insights, and I don't know if you've been keeping touch. Jamie's been putting things out, but there's been over 3,000 listens to those other podcasts that you guys have been doing. And so people are interested. They're really being helped by what you're saying and doing on these podcasts. So pretty neat that you do it.
I gotta say, I'm sorry. I was gonna say, I truly have to say thank you from a personal standpoint on how much confidence talking to people gives me, just in brainstorming ideas and what the start of the school year is going to look like, and sharing some of the frustrations with other teachers. But it helps me to be able to have that growth mindset. So I truly do thank anybody and everybody.
Jamie, these fears are real. They're real for everybody. We only heard from a couple of teachers, but I think any teacher you talk to, if they're being honest, they have some anxiety, they have some fears. And I just want to make sure that we're validating them here, that we let people know it's okay, and give ourselves some grace for having those fears. And I had heard a while back when I was in business, they talked about throwing upward, not downward. So when I was in business, you don't want to throw up on the people that you're in charge of. If you have something, anxiety or whatever, throw up on the people above you, because they can help you. And I just thought about that for an idea of people as they're approaching these fears and that type of thing. But we were talking off air, and I thought you had a really interesting thing that you had just learned. Can you kind of riff on what you were talking to me about?
Oh yeah, and it just validates that we all have fears, and for most of us, our fears are this upcoming and approaching school year. But I've done some research and listened to people based on fear and how to overcome fear. And you have Chris Hadfield, who was an astronaut for a Canadian astronaut actually, and he had just talked. Maybe you saw his, but they don't go up to space with their fingers crossed when they launch on the rocket. And that fear is overcome through knowledge. And they know how to solve every problem in a snap of a finger. They're just through drills and routine and knowledge, it takes the fear out of launching a rocket filled with millions of pounds of fuel. Another good one was Jocko Willink. He was a Navy SEAL and talked about overcoming fear. And one of the first things you have to do to overcome fear is face that fear. And it starts in small steps. And it starts with knowledge. You learn about where that fear is stemming from. And the more you're exposed with that knowledge in those situations, step by step, you start to overcome that fear. And I think that's really important in this situation is, start small, start with those conversations, and some of that anxiety and fear will start to go away, just like it did for distance learning.
And hopefully that's what listening to podcasts will do, or talking to colleagues and having conversations like we're having here. Hopefully it helps to rid some of that anxiety, as like you said, the more knowledge we have, the more we'll be able to overcome that. And you also mentioned something earlier about we have these fears, but we also have this excitement, and we need to make sure we're sharing the excitement with the kids. And talk more about that.
Well, I was just saying, we're going to have those fears, and in many ways, it's important for us not to keep those, but to not let that affect the students. Yeah. We want those students feeding off our excitement and not feeding off our fears. So again, just with that exposure and more knowledge and experiences, those fears and anxiety will start to go away. But in the initial, especially that first week of school, when everything is new, it's new for everybody, and it's okay to recognize that. It's a valid feeling, but have those students feed off your excitement like they're used to, and try to bring something normal back into their lives.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, Jamie. That's going to be something I hope I hang on to and remember when I do actually get closer. I mean, we're still a couple of weeks out, but when those first days come, I'm hoping put that aside and let that excitement shine through. And this kids always feed off our energy, and then it's just so much fun, not only for them, but it is for us too. So we're kind of coming to the end here. As you think back this conversation, how would you summarize it? How would you wrap it up?
Gosh, I have to tell you, not knowing where to start and having fears are very real.
Yeah. But
conversations with colleagues can overcome both.
And that is Thinking PE.